True Divine 44 on most of the platforms I'm on, but check out my other socials in the description box below, please. I appreciate all of the support. I appreciate the new clients coming to me for readings, and of course the new subscribers that help all of that get this message across, and also just be here and build up a community of people that are like-minded, both with individual ideals that we can accept. So this is a writing on the wall, and it is regarding the divine feminine and the attack thereon. And so this is multi-leveled and multifaceted and has been going on for far too long, and I believe is born in the seeds of the hijack that I feel happened a long time ago. And actually, I do feel that in a weird way that this is coming from a divine feminine aspect, but in a different way, with completely different beings, in almost the parasitic nature of what would be depicted, I think, as cold-blooded, but that is actually still female-led. And this is the shadowy beings that we see in the banking industry behind the puppets that we have dictating to us the whims of these shadowy figures, that actually the real deal ones, nobody knows their name. And so this is, I feel, that is one of the things that has just been coming forward for me for a long time, that this is where the severe dislike and disdain for the power of community led by divine feminine female beings, where the men are supported and given reverence for their ability to take action within those communities. And I feel that's where a lot of this sustained attack has been born from. And so I want to talk, I've got my notes as usual, and so I want to talk about the divine feminine attack that just came forward. And through a discussion that I was having with my daughter, I want to say I've just done this video in entirety and realized I had it on mute, and so I have to do it again. So in this conversation, it came up, when did you last hear the term tomboy? And I was like, damn, no. And I used to be described as a tomboy, and my daughter was very definitely described as a tomboy, that being a girl who enjoys doing what is depicted as mostly boyish things. So in of itself, it was an endearing term, but it is ridiculous, but wasn't given any more credence than it being endearing that a girl was, not just always in fluffy dresses and staying clean. In fact, my mum, any Sunday best dresses were put on as I was going out the door, having learned that my friend born at the same time could stay totally clean, but me not. And so I realized that actually those endearing terms that, there was nothing really behind them, have disappeared. Why? And this is part of this attack on the divine feminine, and it is really coming through our children right now. Well, if you attack the children, every child having come from a physical womb, if you attack the divine feminine, the female aspect of this realm, you then attack them through the child, and you attack the womb simultaneously. It goes through those levels of existence, because we have all been in a womb. We build in this vessel that we can then fill up with ourselves to create an experience where we feel, touch, see, and smell things in a different way. And so to attack this is to attack the divine feminine still. To attack their young, their children, is to go to the heart of what a divine feminine female in her right mind. It kills a woman when a child is being attacked, and they're ramping this up. So I went on, and I'm saying we, predominant numbers, I don't believe it's happening, but they are depicting it as such, and they are harnessing a very clique set of people who are mentally ill, and triggering a response out of them, and giving them a lot of space and time to vent that, to play that script out, i.e. people are getting shut down for comments that would depict the biological realities of the bodies that we've built. People are getting shut down, fired from universities for doing so, yet very hateful aggressive speech and actions are being taken by this small triggered group of people, which isn't even doing genuine transgender people any service, because yet again, they are using a set of our community, of our collective, that were very few in numbers in comparison to others, and using the wounds that are caused by the collective on people like that to harness an agenda and a movement in a way that actually makes them suffer even more so. And so this virtue signaling regarding transgender is not coming from a good place. It's coming from a very dark and evil place to attack the many, because in attacking the divine feminine through this transgender agenda, we then see that you are attacking everyone, because everyone having come from a womb. So their imagination in these children now are fixed, instead of just being, generally and lovingly called a tomboy or anything else, but not having been fixed to that label. It is now that if a 3-year-old is playing with dollies and that 3-year-old is a boy, we have a small group of parents that are plastering that child all over social media, saying, I have a transgender child. Virtue signaling and fixing and boxing that child in from the get-go. And that is happening, and it's happening really a lot, not in numbers in the collective, I don't feel yet, but it is happening a lot in the perception of, because as I say, other people for stating biological facts are getting shut down or censored or shadow banned or sacked, fired, whereas this small sect of the community is being pushed up and allowed the space and time to give off the spiel. And so this is where we look at, I went on to look at a term that used to be termed when I was training as a nurse, called Munchausen by proxy. Now, Munchausen syndrome by proxy is different to Munchausen syndrome in that I want to see the depths of the mental illness that is being harnessed by these so-called powers that be and the shadowy beings behind them. This actually went as far as me witnessing and looking after a lady who had had an appendectomy and was healing very well, but still wanted to garner the attention of the medical staff, literally smearing her own shit in a wound so that she would create an infection, so that she could stay in hospital longer and garner more affection in her eyes and attention in her eyes from the medical establishment. So Munchausen by proxy, which used to be NS small lowercase bp, is now being termed, fabricated or induced illness by carers. So now FIIC. So they've changed the term, but the condition hasn't changed too much in that basically the by proxy would mean that this person, this carer, this guardian, this parent is actually making the child or fabricating an illness and doing things like making them drink salt and whatnot, to fabricate an illness to garner the attention via using the child as a conduit to get the medical attention that they want, and in their eyes affection that they want, and recognition of them being a victim as they want. So they'll do this via the child. So they'll physically harm the child, mentally harm the child in order to garner this attention. So whereas this used to be seen as a very, very serious thing, both in doing it to themselves, but then even more serious, using a child as a conduit to do it to themselves and that child. This shows you how dark this gets, and it was seen as very serious and had to be acted upon to protect any child from that kind of thing. Yet they flipped the script in that now we see the medical establishment literally virtue signaling all over social media, high-fiving because they've given a 7-year-old hormone replacement and are planning the surgeries. And the parents are standing there like beauty pageant parents. You can see the pushy behavior, and it is heartbreaking to see these children go through this, which is exactly what these so-called powers that be want. They want to inflict a dagger through every womb in the female, in the collective. By doing that, they put a dagger in the heart of everybody, having all of us having a connection one way or the other to a womb, having come into this realm. And so they flipped the script, in where this used to be kept as a real problem, as serious. Now it is being virtue signaled by all of these medical establishment people, influencers alike. So we've gone from the kind of thing where we shut down mental asylums for severe abuses, and we looked at them and still look at them as a bad thing, because they were doing experimental things with the mind, with the body. So lobotomies and things like that, were going on. So we see the seriousness of that, and we've sort of challenged that. And no one that I know thinks that acceptable. Yet we are allowing now, thinking we've done a good job in getting those places shut down, we are just allowing them to do it even more prevalently, with even less supervision, and around the world via the technologies that they've built up. And so these people now are being praised for offering up their children, pimping out their child to feed what is obviously their need, what is obviously their affliction. And so, far from the mother being that protective lioness, we see mothers in the collective that can be depicted as this, as abusers to the nth degree, abusing their own children through their own wounds in order to garner the attention and feel good about themselves, feel like victims, and feel like the warriors of a journey that did not need to be walked. And so children are in the public eye, having or planning on undergoing hormone treatment and or surgery, and we're seeing this from 3, 7 and up. This is so dark. So we're fixing the child before a child can even know what that child affiliates with sexually. They're fixing sexual labels, gender labels onto experiences that should just be normal for a child to experience, to play with whatever toy, whether it be cars or a doll, to climb a tree or make daisy chains. That should just be allowed and to be explored, and for that child to find themselves within those experiences. Instead, they're being boxed in, limited, and abused, physically changed by bastardized depictions of doctors and nurses who are willing to go with this agenda because there is a lot of money in it. Literally, afflicting wounds upon these children that did not need to happen, that is not necessary surgery. We've gone from saying only surgeries that are necessary should be done to having used the parents who are mentally ill to prime and condition that child to showing itself as what the mother or wants the child to look at, like to a doctor, to the public, using those small sects of people to build up a narrative that is gaining in popularity, gaining in attention. And it comes from a very dark place to ultimately, once and for all, de-seed and dethrone the real divine feminine aspect within this realm. And I feel it's coming from that place of extreme hatred and jealousy with these, cold-blooded type beings that are mostly female-led, but in a very different way. And so we see that they're using influencers to push certain narratives. And they've been doing this very much so during this COVID time because of COVID. And so using that distractionary tool, they've been pushing other things through that really do affect and attack the divinities within, and therefore the physicalities without. So they've been using influencers to look more androgynous, models to look more androgynous, There is an actress that I was made aware of that I look at and my heart breaks. I'm not going to say a name because I don't want to bring space of concentration to that, because I feel that this is how they get away with it, because there are people within the collective that are willing to hook on and say, well done you, instead of saying, I'm worried about you. You're changing your body that way when you showed no signs leading up to this. And this girl, who is now a boy, having had very extensive surgery to become flat-chested, that aura looks very ill and distorted to me and very unhappy. And it is very sad. They're just being pimped out to push a certain narrative. And so we're going to start seeing more of that. Be aware of that for your children, that they will be influencing your children if you're not there to influence them on this. In that they're going to start using more footballers, more actors, more actresses to push this narrative and normalize it. And so I feel a lot of these shadowy beings might be androgynous, and that is another thing that they are thinking will be a great part of their journey to change this realm into something that reflects them even more so. And so they've been changing the language during this distractionary period to things like the NHS changing during 2021, changing the language in 2 hospitals, Brighton and Sussex, to slowly build it up to introduce it, changing the language from things like breastfeeding to chest feeding, breast milk to human milk or chest milk. And that is what midwives are being told they have to use as terminology now. At the end of the day, people being cancelled for stating the fact that women are born with a womb and breasts, and to take that away is to ultimately come for the last kill shot. And it is something that we must not allow to happen. Because in doing this, like I said, you attack all beings that have come from a womb. But for those who are mentally sound, emotionally sound, the sight of seeing someone breastfeed is the most beautiful, purest thing you can witness. Men and women alike melt witnessing this. In their subconscious, remembering their mother looking at them the same way, and the baby looking at the mother the same way as they used to do. And it is a biological fact that females are born with these abilities to feed and nourish the child the same way they fed and nourished the child on the inside in the womb while that child was building. And so we look at the Australian University. They have brought in a gender neutral handbook that must be adhered to by professors and students alike. In February 1, as I mentioned, the UK health officials have been asking nurses to substitute the terminology of breast milk, i.e. to chest milk, and that is being pushed. Part of that push is they are using hashtag trans pregnancy. I'm sorry, but whether you're trans or not, you're not going to be pregnant. So again, they're using things that are nonsensical. This is coming from a mentally ill place to push things that do not make sense against biological fact of these vessels that are beautiful and powerful, whether male or female, and should be revered as such. And for those that are genuinely transgender, allow them to go through this process. But the ones I know don't want this, this public eye, don't want to be harnessed and used as yet another movement of people that have been fighting to feel good in this reality and equal in this reality, harnessing that and triggering off wounds in mentally ill people that then ultimately harm the very people that went with this label genuinely in the first place. And so we've got also hashtag non-binary pregnancy. And then we go on to hashtag gender inclusion. Well, for me, practicality would say that if you're a midwife, you are within the mix of gender inclusion anyway, because the child that you're about to help be birthed into this world, or looking after the birth or before the birth, has ultimately had the most inclusive experience ever, having been made from a male and female. Doesn't make sense. And I want to take your mind back to that dark story that isn't just a story, it's the truth of what happened with that lady smearing shit into her own wound. And parents going to such extents to do similar things to children to garner attention of the medical world. This is the depravity of it. And this is what we're now praising and calling normal and normalizing it. And so Germany's most influential dictionary has been changed during 2021 also to include more gender-neutral terms and to take out certain words that are not. And that is the Durden, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, dictionary. Air Canada and Japan Airlines took ladies and gentlemen out of their announcements. You see where they're making a problem where there was not a problem? How many of you have sat next to anybody on a plane and that person that you're sitting next to having a problem with the announcer saying ladies and gentlemen? I would bet never. So again, making a problem, establishing a problem in the consciousness to then draw it into reality. And that's what they're doing. So it's for us to see the truth behind this and counteract this by being there for our own children. If we're not, there are plenty of influencers out there, and it's going to get worse as they try and push this agenda. There are plenty of influencers out there that will do it for you. We are in the mix of a truly transhumanism agenda. We are in the mix of the darkest and deepest attack on the divine feminine to date. We are in the mix of absolutely losing, if they get their way, losing the actual reality of what it means to be in physical bodies in this experience. And this is all going towards this transhumanism agenda of sterilization and more of an acceptance of people being cattle. That's where they're pushing this too. And so we need to act. They are ramping up the attack on our children in the schools. That's going to start getting even worse. The law is, and medical staff, the medical mafia, corporate elite, politicians, churches and parents are complicit in this if they are going along with this. And it is time to act now in your family home. Have the discussion of what is going on regarding this so that you can get your truth and your wisdom through there first before these influencers have far too much time with your child in order to do this. So we've got here parental perversion. Then we've got in the mix of it medical experiments and the medical mafia and the elites behind those who finance a lot of those things, the depravity of them and how they attach sex to everything, even the divine feminine, divine masculine aspects. And that they are using and harnessing this industry. They're using the egos of those doctors and nurses that would go along with this for the sake of them having an even nicer car the next month. We have influencers, as I've mentioned. We have schools and unis. They're literally molding and rewriting history in dictionaries, sacking any professors or staff, any staff alike that would deign to speak about biology, that would deign to speak about the reality. And so there is the attack via the insurance companies. The insurance companies are making, dollar bill off this kind of agenda, as they usually do one way or the other. And so looking out for that is very important too, and acting to make sure your voice is heard regarding that is super important too. We have the elites that are seeking to divide and separate, in particular right now, this year and next year, a ramping up of separating the divine feminine from their child that they bore, that they look after, or that they've taken over guardianship for. We have the eugenesis behind this. All of that experimentation on children, the unseen, the unheard, all of that, coming out now into the reality, finding out where they could find those weak spots, where they could build on them, and create a victimized set of society that is very, very noisy, to say the least. And so I want to go on to say that this attack is coming through what seems to be this inclusion thing that they keep going on about, to looking at just a few things. This is a term that I've just learned, and I'll find my notes to be able to tell you it. Sorry for the rattling of the paper. TERF. This is TERFisaslur.com, and TERF stands for that many women have been given the label of without even asking for it, and it stands for trans exclusionary radical feminist. Now, in the people's eyes who are being triggered by these so-called powers that be into the depths of their mental illness, that would use a child as a conduit to affect the dagger that goes through each and every womb, each and every time they do it. You don't ask for this label, you just get it. Unless you're virtue signaling alongside them and being complicit in the abuse of their child, basically you will be classed as this if you're a female. You will turn into an extreme feminist. There are things like this all over the net. You can't have, let me share this. Share screen. Sorry, I thought I'd shared it. So, TERFisaslur.com documenting the abuse, harassment, and misogyny of transgender identity politics. So, we've got posts like this going up all of the time. And as I said, TERF is a new term that I've just learned. And if you are not one of the ones virtue signaling and supporting this abuse of the children via the label, under the label of transgender, then you will be classed as one of these if you're female. And you can see the depravity of the things that are posted, dead TERFs, hanging up things like this. Now, this is really good in that it's saying here the Deputy Prime Minister of Spain, Carmen Calvo, recently signed a Socialist Party statement in favour of protecting women's sex-based rights and criticising the impact of male self-identification into women's spaces. Now, what I want to share is that they've been trying to take over the territory and change up the way that we worked really well as a system. And this is where I feel they are insanely, these shadowy beings are insanely jealous and full of hatred for the system that is very similar to theirs, but works in a different way with love and empathy. Because I think they are female-led, like the bees. I think they are female-led, like the ants. I think they are female-led. And they are parasitic in nature. And so they hate the divine feminine aspect of leading the community, of guiding the child. And so they've been trying to take over this space in various ways. And this next label that they're doing this under is the transgender label. And so what they've been doing is when you take a territory, if you're going to war, what you'll do is you'll want to take up the space first. So you may sneak in troops. You may come head to head in a battle. This is all about planting the flag in the soil, or the sword in the soil, to say that you won the battle. So they'll take the physical territory. So they're coming for the physical woman. They're making replicas in transgender children of women who were previously boys. They're doing this through extreme and painful surgeries and dangerous surgeries, many of which in the genital area never heal up quite as well. It's a very complicated place to heal from operatively. And so you take over the territory. So they've been doing that. They're taking over the territory of the physical womb. Then you change the language. Now, people might not think this is powerful. This is one of the most powerful things. They change the name of the person or the people that they're trying to take over. If you look at Canada, this has been going on since the Second World War with the natives there. You change the name. You affiliate them with a different name, which is what is happening to our children under this transgender agenda. So you take the name and you take the language. This is what they've been doing with this push to change language, to change the terminology that naturally belongs to the female and to the divine feminine, and the connection to the divine feminine. Like I said before, men and women alike, seeing somebody breastfeeding, stop and just smile. If they're right-minded and right-hearted, they smile, because it's the most loving, beautiful thing to witness. But on the other hand, that's not how it's being seen right now. And so to take the territory is to change the language, to change the perception of that. So now, can you believe it, that people would affiliate females as a TERF? They would look at a breastfeeding mother and feel either insane hatred, insane jealousy, or both. And so they're harnessing mentally ill people within the community and triggering them into a very violent response in taking the territory of the divine feminine. And so this is a good thing. And they hung an effigy of her corpse on the tree after doing it. So this is where I said before, smearing the shit on the wound is depictive of this, of how low this goes, how dangerous these people who are being harnessed by these so-called powers that be are. So this is what is being put out there. Now, funny enough, I did a transgender video the other day, and it's the first time Susie Q has ever had to sort of kick somebody for saying I should be raped. And this is something I was expecting, but I had to be educated about it because people are getting death threats, they're being cancelled, it's very dangerous to speak out. So again, taking the territory, it makes people, they're changing the terminology and simultaneously virtue signaling so much and changing laws so much that they've got people afraid to speak their truth into that space. And when you do, bad things happen. Again, this is because they're not working with, and we're not working with in this aspect, people who are mentally well. We are working with imbalanced people who are being harnessed by a very dark power source into trying triggering a community into a response. So any trans allies at Pride London right now need to step the fuck up and take out the TERF trash. Get in their faces, make them afraid. Debate never works, so fuck them up. Pride, hashtag TERFs out. Again, taking the territory and taking the space. Whereas Pride has always been about, you know, people coming together to fight for genuine equal rights of those who have been labelled wrongly or treated wrongly, even for tax purposes, and choices that they make of who they resonate with, to love and be with. They've taken over that space now, and actually the women, the real women, biological women within the Pride movement are to be excluded, not just excluded, in this person's words, fucked up. So we've got things like this going on. Etsy, and Etsy's selling them. Yet certain political things, if you were to put on Etsy, would be taken off. And I'm not saying I'm sick of political sides, but at the end of the day, I would rather them have the right to speak, because when they don't, this happens. We create people like this who are violent to the core. They are triggering mental illness, and they're doing it to our children. This is going through the schools. This is going through the hospitals, right from birth now, with the terminology being changed in those 2 hospitals in the UK. Trans women aren't real women. Yeah, you know what will be unreal? Your pain when my fist meets your face. So this is where they flipped the script. These statements aren't from a sane place. They're not from a sane place. And this is just one thing, showing all of this hatred, all of this violence. One thing that goes on and on and on. Overit.com. This is where people are sharing stories, where, you know, they're running into the effects of these few people being harnessed and triggered into reactionary places where they want to harm anybody who isn't licking their feet and supporting them in abusing their child. So this, again, you can look at it outside of this video, but it goes on and on and on just to get an idea. Even taking the sports about the girls losing places on teams. We are biologically built different. Whether you're born male or female, biologically we're different. Men having longer, wider muscles. And men going into women's sports as transgender, they're not changing how strong they are comparatively. Women are getting hurt in their own sports that they've trained for their whole lives, because, again, even with all this hatred, can you imagine if it was coming from a place like from me as a truther? Can you imagine if I was coming out with all of this hatred and violence? This warlike tactic of taking over territory? I'd be shut down. But it's not happening here. And then we've got this. And there's places like this in the UK popping up too. But this is cranix.com, and this is their full title is, I don't know, what is it? Crane Center. So based in California, and it goes on to say about the surgeries that they do. And so the surgeries that they do are some of these in Texas, California. Let's see if we can see. So, and the threads that I found, I'm not going to put them up because they've got pictures of children being used within this. But there, if you go looking for them, there's pictures of these children having gone through terribly extensive surgeries before they've even had a chance to explore what they want to do, with the thumbs up, with this parent holding on to them and the surgeon smiling with the thumbs up. It's sick what they'll do to this child. And so for an adult to choose, do what you like. Do what you like, be free to do what you like. But to choose on behalf of a child to cause this kind of physical pain and emotional and mental pain, spiritual pain, is dark. And it's coming from a place to change humanity. We're in the mix of this transhuman agenda. And it comes from attacking the divine feminine, therefore attacking the children. So double incision top surgery, And so this is where it's going to take chests, breasts from patients. And this centre, I chose this one because there's recordings and photographs all over the place regarding people inquiring, even truthers inquiring to see what they'll do and when, and doing this kind of surgery quite happily to 14-year-olds and younger. So where is the mouse? How do I? So the male chest contouring and body masculinization. Top surgery in patients under 18. We are very accustomed to treating patients who are less than 18. What do we word it? Years old. Follow the current World Professional Association of Transgendered Health guidelines, consent of both parents, and 2 surgery referral letters, which apparently are not hard to get. And apparently the 2-parent thing is bullshit. From mental health care professionals are required. Additional requirements will be discussed at the time of consultation. And so this is where I've noticed too that this is where they are really going for the divine feminine, because we're seeing a lot more stories of it actually being the men that are coming forward and going to court to try and save their children from this. Many of which have been accused of being so judgmental and whatnot. And when I've looked into it, they haven't. They've been like, my child can be whatever my child wants to be, but they have to be a child first to know what they want to be without going through things that are very hard to reverse. And so there's that it's mostly women that are being mentally triggered into this fabricated illness, fabricated syndrome that used to be Munchausen by proxy. So let's look at trans women. So we've got facial feminization, vaginoplasty. Now, this I know is so hard to heal and never works quite like they say. And so, because the body isn't made to do that. So robotic assisted peritoneal flap vaginoplasty has several names. Davidov vaginoplasty and peritoneal pull through the best known alternative terms. The peritoneum is the middle lining of the abdomen, is the inside of the abdomen. Through a small incision on the abdomen, robotic assisted laparoscopically is performed to rearrange the peritoneum in the pelvis. This will create the inside half of the vaginal canal. The remainder of the vaginoplasty is a standard pineal inversion vaginoplasty. Permanent hair removal is required on the genital area prior to surgery. That would be because in women, any surgeries around the vagina are really hard to heal because it is the area that it is. There is a lot of secretion. It's very warm. It can be prone to infection when disturbed. It's very sensitive to pH levels and things. So it's bad enough healing from anything down there as a woman, but using different parts of the body that were not biologically made to be used that way. Actually, if you look at the real stories and real testimonies of people who've gone through this, they're not good as far as healing wise. So this goes on and on and on. And this is an attack on the divine feminine, and they're coming for our children. We're going to see as this year goes on a bigger push towards this, which is why I'm putting it out there. It's not to be divisive. It's not to be hateful, but it is to speak out on behalf of the unseen, of the unheard, of the children that are being forced into a position in the public eye in order to sway and please an agenda that is being pushed from up on high. We have to speak out about this, and we have to be very, we have to recognize very much so that we're in war, and that territory is being taken over on many different levels and many different aspects. And much of that war and that takeover of territory involves our children, ultimately pointing the dagger towards eventually the divine feminine, the females. There is so much of an increase in crime regarding so-called transgender people. And I say so-called because I feel these do not reflect the genuine transgender people, being extremely violent to particularly those who have been women and have transgendered into men. They are really harnessing the hatred that they felt for their own body and using that as a conduit to harm women who deign to be women, who deign to be female, in ways that, you know, are unthinkable. If you look at the prison system, again, the unseen, the unheard, the poor women in there are being abused and raped by people who are saying they're transgender, and half of them will be just saying it. Rapists are being put in because they say they affiliate with being a woman and not the biological body that they're in. They're being put into female prisons. Now, if these people have been convicted as murderers, as rapists, and then they're being put into female prisons, that is another aspect that I would ask all of you guys to look into and then make noise about what you find. Because again, they are the unseen and unheard women that are now being abused regularly by those who say they are transgender. I had some numbers on that, but I'll sort out those notes at a later date. So that's basically what I want to cover for today for that. I might put some more out later on. I hope you can take what I said and know that it's from a place of love, and know that this is serious. This is a takeover of territory. This is war, and we need to act on behalf of our children now, because just psychically I saw this coming down the line, but now I'm really feeling it knocking at the door. Schools, you want to be real careful if your child's still going to school right now, because these kind of agendas are being pushed and are going to get pushed even more so over the next few months of this year. And so look out for that. Be very divine and sovereign in that, and be the guardian that your child deserves and wants you to be. Guardian over them, guard them. And so much love, much balance, and much wholeness. Mwah. Sit up straight.